By Microsoft. My name is Robert Chiaffi. I'm the COO and co-founder of Progressive Computing, and I'm honored that Microsoft has asked me to share my experiences with you today. I've been running a growing and successful MSP in the New York City area for the last 26 years. My goal today, or how I define success, is if you walk away with just one or two nuggets, you don't need to have a great epiphany on every single slide, but if you walk away with one or two little nuggets, then I've been successful, at least by my definition. So I'm just going to jump to it. Before I get into any of the content, I want to explain a little bit about who we are. I think it's fair that you know who I am and a little bit about us. We were founded in 1993. There's a little song list from that era, if you were around. We're based out of Yonkers, New York, which is, if you know the geography here, we're about 20 miles north of Midtown Manhattan, right in the shadow of New York City. We started this company, my business partner and I, as X-based developers, doing things like Fox Pro and Clipper. Um, there was a time when off-the-shelf software or shrink wrap or downloadable software was nowhere to be found. So we had to develop things. I had a lot of fun with that for years. In 1998, we hired our first full-time tech. That was the year that Seinfeld went off the air, or I should say, when the show ended, just to give you a time frame of how long ago it's been. And in 2007, we made this leap from the break fix model into the MSP world. So it's been about 12 years. Today we're at 27 people. I said this last week. I kind of lost count. I think we're at 27 because of some accepted offers, and we have a few more open positions that we're trying to fill. So we may hit 30 before the end of the year. And this is yours truly, me. There's a little picture of me. Have a little bit more facial hair and longer hair these days if you've seen me in person. But that's me. And find me on LinkedIn if you want to continue the conversation there. So, what's your story? I've made lots of friends in this space, and I always ask them, how did you get here? Everyone has the story, but it seems like there's a recurrence to those stories. They're all the same. If Few, if ever, were planned, many landed in their MSP business by mistake or by chance. I've heard things like, hey, I lost my job. I had some side clients. I was in between jobs. A friend or family member asked me to help with this thing called an MSP, and so I jumped in, and now I'm running it. So you hear all sorts of stories, and whatever they are, I don't think many of us technicians, at least, started one day thinking, oh, I want to start an MSP and all of the things that go along with that. Once they started growing, they realized that they can't be a tech anymore. And this leads to a little bit of an identity crisis because, like me, I'm a tech at heart, and that's my happy place, sifting through a box of stuff and fixing things. Um, but moreover, you're led to or forced to start handling issues that you didn't have before. Things like payroll, insurance, legal agreements, HR, bookkeeping, collections, angry customers. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Suddenly, you figure out you're not necessarily doing so much tech work anymore. And while we are problem solvers by nature, we can't simply muscle our way through these problems. They're foreign to us. They require different skill sets other than just it's a problem and I can break it down and fix it. And maybe even suddenly, and don't feel bad if this is you, you pick up your head one day and you see competitors sailing past you, or you meet someone at a trade show and their story just completely blows you away. They're 150 techs, they're in the tens of millions in sales, and you're still struggling to break 10, 12 engineers or that $1 million mark. And you're scratching your head saying, I'm just as smart as that guy. How come that's not me? And the truth is, many of us were neither designed nor prepared to run an MSP. So what I'm hoping today is to share some information that will help you maybe break through some of those barriers. We've all started out with this idea. We've had this seed in mind, and we're hoping to grow it into a sapling, into a tree, maybe into some woods, and hopefully a forest. And the prospect of doing this starts out as fun, easy, and cool, but then we realize it becomes a slog. It's like pushing through the mud sometimes instead of just being on an open, flat, and dry road. Growth is never a smooth graph, and there are always steps or roadblocks that you hit. Each one of them is going to be different, and they get more complicated over time, and you can't always solve them on your own. The more steps we take, the more dynamic the business becomes. It just simply gets more complicated. For some, the luster or dream of running your own company begins to wear you down. And maybe even for a couple of you out there, the financial and personal toll is a heavy burden. And I'm saying all of these things because I've seen friends and friends in the industry go through this. It's easy to get lost, to feel overwhelmed, and just frankly get confused. So, where do you go for help? And I think this is the first place that you need to start if this is you, and that is peer groups. It's a mistake not to join. Let me break this down for you a little bit. I feel that there are really two types of peer groups. There's competitive, what I'll call competitive and non-competitive. The competitive ones, you're going to be bumping into people who are literally in your neighborhood that may be your direct competitors. And the non-competitive ones, you might be more rubbing elbows with people from across the country. And I'll go into that a little bit more, but why join a peer group? Because connecting with them is the place to share business and technical information. You become a resource for each other. You've got opportunities to attend and learn. And while some peers may be viewed as a competitor, I think, and what I've experienced is you begin to build a sense of camaraderie, and that just seems to kind of trump everything else. You need to be vulnerable and you need to let your guard down. You'd be surprised how many people are out there who are like-minded like you, that are just cool people who want to help you and want to be helped. So just some quick examples. There are local tech groups probably in your area like there are in mine. I put up the logo for the IAMCP. Here in New York, we have a group called the New York Small Business Server Group. It's been around for a long time. It's mainly smaller shops, but and there's a lot of technical people in there. These types of groups tend to be technical and have some uh, business components to them as well. There's also obviously local business groups like Young Entrepreneurs, a Vistage, a Mastermind. These are obviously going to focus more on business development. I would encourage you to get involved in something like that if you can. And then there's the industry peer groups. I'm a proud member of HTG, which is now IT Nation Evolve, but there are others. Taylor Business Group is one that I know of. I know that there are others as well. These tend to focus on the MSP or IT service provider management, um, that aspect of thing. Obviously, there are costs, time and money, but these are investments that enable you to work on the business instead of just in it. So the key takeaway here is number one, check your ego at the door. Your peers have a lot to teach you. When I walked into HTG, I thought I was the smartest guy in the room, and I quickly learned that I wasn't, and I had a lot to learn. You can learn even just by observing. You don't even have to necessarily open your mouth or participate. You just sit around and listen and watch what's going on. So first and foremost, just go out and join a group if you haven't. The second thing that I'll share with you is, and this came from my participation in our peer group, is I, I hit a wall at one point in our business and I just came to this epiphany that our business was like a PC, but it had no operating system. And a PC with no OS it's just hard to operate. It's static. It's tough to manage. I mean, it's just hard to do anything with. So I installed an operating system, and I thought that was kind of a cool, geeky way of supercharging my business. And we use the system EOS to be specific. And I'm not here to endorse EOS in particular. All I'm here to do is to tell you my experience that it has worked extremely well for us. If you don't know what it is, it's based upon this book called Traction. Basically, Traction distilled all the best business ideas from all the other business book titans out there, made it into like an actuable plan. And it's helped us with creating our business plan, running meetings, defining target markets, et cetera. I'm actually going to go over a couple of those things with you today. There's other systems out there like StratUp. I have very little exposure to that. I have some friends that are using it, and there's some benefits one versus the other, vice versa. I know some people who are kind of combining them. Here's the deal. These are all a little bit like lifestyle diets. In my humble opinion, you've got to pick what works for you, what produces the results, right? I hate gyms, so I like going outside. I like running. I like biking. I've recently joined a boxing gym because that cardio and boxing exercise keeps me interested. But just pushing weights or pushing on a machine, it's I find it boring. So one thing is going to work for somebody else, and something else is going to work for me. The point is here, learn from others. You're just simply not smarter than everybody else. I know I'm not. use a system that has structure to it, that's going to teach you basic business management principles, because most of us who grew up as technicians to start this business don't have that background. Be consistent with your application of what you learn. This is, it's like a tech manual. You're just going to absorb all the what's and you're just going to start implementing. So for most techs, this stuff will actually come easy if you study the material. And there's no quick fixes. This takes time over time to do it. It takes, it took us many years to actually get full traction, but you'll see the benefits as long as you stick with it. One of the main concepts out of EOS or any other system like that is to have a business plan, and you obviously need one, but that's really not helpful, that statement unto itself. So I want to break it down for you a little more, and I want to start with this quote from Sun Tzu, who says strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. I think a lot of this is pretty obvious, but you can have great strategy, but if you don't know how to execute, yeah, you might eventually get there, but it's going to be slow and inefficient. That's probably better than the second half of that statement, which is really just saying you can execute really, really well on the small stuff, but if you're not following a strategy, I mean, you're just destined for mediocrity or just defeat. You may not get anywhere, or if you do get somewhere, it's going to be by dumb luck. So you have to develop a roadmap for yourself. Gather your team, gather the best and the brightest, or get help from peers. Right? EOS in particular will help you develop a framework that might look a little like this, or you could still do this on your own if you decide not to follow a system. But and I've seen this in different systems, there's usually some sort of annual theme or a company goal. And I just made something up here just to give you a little bit of an idea of what all of this might look like. You start with an overarching annual goal and you break it down by quarter. So in Q1, we may want to implement a new PSA system, like a ticketing system, to manage our current ticket flow. Or maybe you don't even have one yet. You want to get one. In Q2, you want to implement a remote monitoring and management tool, or reboot your onboarding for the one that you're using because you may not be using it efficiently. Maybe Q3, you want to dive into SOPs and document the 15 most critical steps that your techs do. Q4 might be around internal and also customer facing reports and automating that. The point is not so much this exact plan, but that if you start breaking your annual goal down into quarterly ones, this also in turn helps you determine what everyone needs to do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And it keeps you from chasing butterflies or that new thing. I just went to a trade show and I saw this vendor and I got to do this. And all of a sudden your company isn't going in a different direction and it's not really according to your strategy. You're executing tactically and you're not following the strategy, and it's the noise before defeat. So I know I started with the business plan, but there's really a foundational element that comes first. And the most important thing for you to do is to define your core values. What is unique to you? This defines your culture. I've put up our 4 core values here, and the number can be any place between 3 and 7, depending upon who you ask. These are what make us unique. I put them up here freely because if you copy them, all I'm going to tell you is, well, you're not me, you're not us, you're not our company. So they may give you a little bit of inspiration, but it's not your culture, it's my culture. And culture is one of those things you can't just simply copy. So your core values really define your cultures, and it really sets everything else in motion. Everything else is built on this foundation. So you must spend the time to get these things right. And I'll make the point a little bit more by giving you some examples of what culture looks like specifically. Core values help to set proper expectations. They help drive and align behaviors on the inside of your organization. It makes sure that your people are behaving in a manner that is consistent with the culture that you define and that everybody else is also following. So there's consistency there from one person to the next. It also helps filter your hires. Now, I'm not going to go deep into this because last week's presentation was all about this and about using core values to filter your hires. So I would encourage you to go back and listen to that pre-recording. But certainly you use your values to filter out hires because you might hire the best tech in the world, sharpest tool in the shed. But if he's, in our case, very disrespectful or is super confident but shows no humility, then he's not going to be a good fit in our organization. And the lack of those core values is going to surpass any technical skills that he brings to the table. As a leader, you want to make sure that you publicly celebrate and reward things, demonstrations around core values. So if you see an employee, in our case, if you see an employee really exemplifying the spirit of team or the value of team, then we want to make sure that we reward and celebrate them. There's lots of different tools that you can do that with. Bonusly, we use a system called Kudos Now, and there's plenty of other ways that you can be creative with that. And sometimes you just have to say goodbye to a bad egg in your organization. Core values give you clarity on why your gut instinct is telling you, I need to get rid of this person, right? Because you can now measure them and judge them based upon values. And we've cleaned house here many years ago based on our core values because we had some bad eggs. We really didn't know why until we established these. There's another thing just to avoid is to avoid permission to play values and aspirational ones. A good example of permission to play is honesty. If you are walking in the door, we assume that you're an honest person. To say that honesty is a core value, to us, that's a permission to play. It's a given. You must be honest, right? It's not something that I would hold as a centerpiece that, oh, we're honest people. It seems weird to say that, right? Or aspirational ones. So I'll use us as an example again. We're in the New York City area. If I were to say one of our values is to be the smartest, techs in all of New York City, I'm sure that would solicit a lot of laughter from everybody listening right now, including myself, because that's just folly. I mean, I've got really smart techs and they're awesome people and I love them and they adhere to my core values, but there's probably other people out there that are smarter. So don't try to aspire to be something that you're not or try to make a statement around something that just isn't quite true. Beyond your core values, so you've got them defined and that helps you get the right people aboard your ship, but you need some focus where you're going. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see MSPs make is trying to be things to all people. So you have to define your target customer profile. I ask this question especially of people who are not in peer groups, and it's amazing the answers I get. And I get things like, well, I serve small businesses. And my answer is, I don't know. That doesn't really excite me. Be a little bit more specific. So let's run through this little quick fake exercise just to see how that might go. And so I might encourage them to say, well, maybe small businesses with at least 5 PCs. Oh, okay, that's good. You're getting a little better. It's not really that specific yet. Well, maybe they have to be in a certain geography. All right, we're getting a little closer. Maybe in a specific industry, maybe preferably accounting or legal. Okay, we're getting even better now, right? No retail. Actually, that's one of ours because we don't want to deal with customers who have hours on the weekends and at nights. So we avoid it. In fact, we actually refuse retail. So it's interesting how one might use a negative to define what your positive is. And for us, no internal IT staff. We're getting very specific now. And then I'll add things in like companies that are growing or that have a strategic view of technology. Those sorts of things help get very specific. Now, why? Why? So that whenever you're engaging in marketing, you know what to promote. If you're engaging in sales, you know how to drive it or what to drive, and your techs know who is being supported. So to just demonstrate or to illustrate the power of focus, I want to read to you a quote, and it goes like this. The sun provides the earth with billions of kilowatts of energy, yet if you stand in it for an hour, the worst you will get is a little sunburn. On the other hand, a few watts of energy focused in one direction is all a laser beam needs to cut through diamonds. So a few kilowatts of focused energy through a laser can cut through some of the hardest substances known to man, while the sun can barely give you a sunburn, and that's the power of focus. So I'm going to continue with that theme of focus on the next slide and couple that with something called your tech stack. You need to have a well-defined technology stack, and this is the second mistake that I see MSPs that especially who are not part of a peer group make consistently. They're trying to deliver all things to all people. If you want to sell the best cheeseburger in town. You're also not selling the best Italian food, the best Indian food, the best Vietnamese food, the best Turkish food. How could you possibly do all of those things well? The answer is that you can't. And I know you know this in your heart of hearts that you know this. So questions to ask yourself: what manufacturers do you sell and support? We're a Dell shop. You like it or not, that's all we sell. Do we have a couple of others out there? Sure, but it's 99.9% Dell. What cloud services do you offer? Think of things like Azure or a private cloud. Be consistent. What is your disaster recovery technology? We're a huge Axion partner, but I know plenty of people using Datto and there's other great technology out there. Well, I'm not plugging any particular company, but when it comes to DR, we support one and only one solution because it's just too hard to master them all. What AV software are you supporting? Do you require your clients to have policies like an acceptable use policy? Do you enforce them to have password policies or force them to use two-factor authentication? Do you support end-of-life hardware and software? Will you support a machine that's 7 years old and out of warranty? These are all things that you would ask yourself to help build your technology stack. And again, when you couple your tech stack with your target customer profile, it helps marketing to understand what needs to be specifically promoted, what keep sales in their lane, what they're selling. They're not selling 15 different solutions. And techs, by the way, get happy because they know this is the solution that you offer. So the same wise here, but when you couple these things with the target customer profile, all of this is going to lead to greater profitability for your business, happier clients, happier employees, which is critical to keeping your customers happy, right? More scalability for your business. You can grow faster and bigger and better, and ultimately greater valuation for those that are thinking about what the future holds for them, what sort of value that they're building. That kind of brings me to the end. I really wish I had so much more content that I would have loved to have presented, but it's so hard to pack it in all under 25 minutes. I tried to give you some of the big items that I thought were the most critical, the most the biggest roadblocks or the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make, and even some of the ones that we have made as well. And just in case you're listening later or you don't have an opportunity to get your question in, there's my contact information on my contact information for LinkedIn. Please send me a link request. I'd be happy to continue that conversation online. But if we have some questions now, I'd be happy to field those now. Do we have any questions? Andrea, I think you are monitoring the.
Yeah, I was checking the chat box, so I think we are free from questions for now. We will definitely post the recording of the call. We might get questions even on YouTube. Sometimes I notice that as well. And post it. We will also post the recording on Microsoft Partner Community on the post event. I think it was a great presentation, Robert, and we still have 2 episodes left of the Thought Leadership series with progressive computing. So for sure, there is definite time for more great content in these 2 episodes. I really want to thank you for your time and everyone's time. I believe we can conclude this session.
Okay. It's my pleasure to be here. If there's any questions, like I said, feel free to reach out to me in either the YouTube posting or directly on LinkedIn, either way.
And on LinkedIn. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and
thank you.
Have a lovely day.